maybe the first time you've done actual vanilla JavaScript. And I'm going to go over some real core basics and talk about vanilla JavaScript as well, what that word means, and we're just going to move nice and slow, okay? And we'll continue this tomorrow as well and through next week. So we're kind of moving more into the code stuff now, particularly just the JavaScript code, okay? Really basic, clean JavaScript code. Righto, first up, you can see in this HTML template, also just as a heads up, I'm going to ask questions. So if you're on that screen, if you're in the Zoom meeting, I'm going to throw questions at you because that's how I teach, right? If you're not available to answer questions, maybe just change your name to away, and then I can see that you're not there if you've run off to go to the loo or if you've got to go do something, yeah? And I won't ask you questions. But if I see your name, I'm just going to ask you questions as I go. Okay, so first up, Solomon, can you tell me what this is that I've just highlighted on the screen?
That would be your CSS.
Yeah, cool. What kind of CSS is it?
Let's have a look. Content border, width margin.
Oh, sorry, just a heads up. The three types being inline, internal, external. Which one's that?
Oh, that's internal CSS.
Yeah, awesome. Ben, what's the difference between internal CSS and inline CSS?
Inline CSS is when you go onto an element and type in style equals quotations and then put your styles in there, as opposed to doing what you've done there.
Yeah, cool. Jason, why have I put the script tags at the bottom there above the closing body tag?
Because that's where you put them usually, and because it doesn't have to read all your IDs and stuff first from the top down.
Yeah, so whenever you're doing internal script like we're doing now, and you guys are definitely going to move on to doing external script, so you'll actually use external files, certainly for this module. But when we're kind of playing around with JavaScript and just learning some basics, we'll do it all on an HTML page because it's far simpler and it's easier. It's like a good sandbox. But when you do that, you should always place your script at the bottom of the page. Okay, and those two script tags go just above the closing body tag. Now you'll see templates online and other coders putting them in other places in the page. On very rare occasions, and I mean really rare, in the past 6 or 7 years I've been coding away with JavaScript, I've seen people say it has to be, you know, in the head or in the HTML further up. But 99% of the time, it should always be there. And if it's not there, it's incorrect, okay? And you don't really want to be throwing JavaScript around anywhere in the HTML templates because it's messy. It should be in the correct place, which is at the bottom. And that's where you'll link all your script tags as well when you're using external scripts. It's really important as a basic, okay? Cool. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a couple of basics with console log and console dir, which we didn't look at yesterday. And then we're going to move on and we're just going to interact with something known as the DOM. Okay. Now the DOM is what's known as the document object model, right? Does anyone who's online today know what I'm talking about when I say the DOM or the document object model?
Isn't that like the web page? So with JavaScript, you can, for example, like in a span, replace a word or something?
Yeah, pretty much. Like DOM is like a fancy coding term for HTML, right? Because if you think about it, HTML is just something that's stored in the computer's memory. Like we see it as code because we look at it through our eyes, but the computer sees it differently. So when we talk about document object model, it more or less means HTML, but just in a slightly more memory way, like storing it in a memory and accessing little memory chips. So when we access the DOM, they talk about it as a tree. And I'll try and find a diagram for something like that. But it means when we like use an ID to grab a little piece of the DOM, like this piece here, and we can then manipulate it with JavaScript. So there's a lot of complicated ways of talking about the DOM, D-O-M, and this is for Zoe as well. Zoe, have you heard that term before, DOM, D-O-M?
Nah, I just saw it the other day when we were reading those articles and it was there.
Yeah, I've put some links up about it, but don't be put off by the DOM for everyone, because it's just, in all the time that I've been using HTML and JavaScript, DOM is a complicated way of talking about HTML, right? And you can kind of get into it and really know and understand what it means by DOM, but they're more or less just referring to HTML and bits of HTML. And it is usually used, meaning the word DOM, when you start using JavaScript, okay? So I've got some articles, I think, today in the lesson plan that talk about the DOM. Chris Coy has written a good article, Chris Coy being CSS Tricks, who I recommend to anyone who's doing front-end web development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And if you want to read a bit further on it, feel free. But that's all I mean, and I'll use that word going forward, meaning DOM, D-O-M. So the first thing we're going to do, right, is I'm just going to do a console log, and we did this yesterday. Feel free to follow along. Feel free just to chill out if you want to. And we know that I can do something like that. And if I open this in the browser, here's the template. If I go to Inspector, right click Inspect, I'll just get this so it's not looking so terrible, and hopefully get it on the bottom of the page. There we go. Now, if I inspect, you can see the console is outputting working. And we talked about console log yesterday. You use it for testing purposes. You put it in bits of code to see if the code is running, okay? Now, there's something different than console log. There's something known as console dir, okay? And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go a little bit ahead, but I just wanna show you the main difference between the two. I'm gonna create a variable called get, which we go after, get cost, okay? And I'm gonna use a little bit of code here. This is normal JavaScript code now. Document get, I got that right, get element. This is going terribly, but that's okay. Document dot get, oh, there we go. Get element by ID. I think that should work. Yep, we got the blue. Okay, so I'll move my cursor. So I've made a variable called get cost, and then I'm using some code to say document get element by ID, and I'm going after cost, okay? And we'll talk about what this is. So this line of code, any takers as to what that's doing? Anybody know what I'm doing with that highlighted line there?
The cost equal what the ID is, which is the contents of the ID.
Yeah. I guess it's making the variable get cost equal what the ID cost is, but what's it doing in really basic terms? If we were talking about, what am I trying to do with that line of code on 33? What am I doing? You had to say to someone and really
the ID.
What's that, mate?
Try to read or look at the ID.
Yeah, pretty much. All I'm doing is with JavaScript code, right? I'm grabbing this, okay? And I'm saying, hey, document. What is document?
Document's the whole HTML page, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the HTML. Yep, cool. It's important that we make sure everyone's cool with that. Document's just HTML. And then I'm saying get an element by ID cost, which is this one here, okay? So I'm just grabbing it. Now we'll talk about, it's called DOM, interacting with the DOM, or DOM manipulation or interaction. But all it is JavaScript code, right? If I was writing it in my way, I'd say JavaScript code that gets the cost element. And I'll even put a little hash there, okay? Just to make sure that it looks like an ID, okay? Now, I'm just gonna save that, and we can see now that we've got a variable called get cost, and we're grabbing it from the document, and we're grabbing it by the ID, okay? And this code is used a lot in JavaScript, get element by ID. Now, if I was to go console.log, I'll just comment out this one below, And if I go get cost, okay. I'm just going to save that, jump back over here and reload. Cool. You can see now the console has logged out the actual element that I grabbed with that code. You guys cool with that? That okay? Just a thumbs up or an okay? Yep. Solomon's nodding. Sweet as. Okay, yep. Cool. Now, the big difference is, and I'll have to teach this again for Alex and Gabe and whoever else isn't here today, because it's that important, particularly when you're doing this module, foundation code, is you need to also know this one called console.dir. Okay, now this is similar in where it outputs something to the console, but if we do the same thing there, so if I just copy that variable, get cost, and put it in console.dir, I'll just put a space between them. Okay, and let's have a look what it outputs. Okay, now you can see something that's totally different. And this is really important if you want to interact with the DOM or the HTML. If you want to grab things with code and then change them, have them update, make them do backflips, literally, if you want to do CSS transforms and that kind of stuff. This is giving us an object of data. Okay, you see the little arrow here? And if I click on that arrow, see how it opens up all this stuff underneath? That's really illustrating, guys, what the DOM is. The DOM is a tree of information, and they're called little nodes. They're actually known as DOM nodes, objects and properties and values. It's lots of information. So what it means is, I'll just jump back here. This tiny little bit of HTML, if you really want to look at it by using something like console.dir, it's no longer a tiny little bit of HTML. It's actually a big chunk of information that you can do millions of things with, believe it or not. I know it's a big number, but it's true. And this div, which it's all it's talking about the cost div. It's got properties like, I don't even know what ARIA is. I don't want to know. I've never had to use it, but it's got attribute style map or attributes. We know what attributes are. Can anyone think of an attribute? Off the top of your head? I can't think of one. href is an attribute, right? A link, or style is an attribute. So if I open the attributes property, look at this. You've got all these different kinds of attributes that open up. If I open up the children property, it tells me if it has children in the DOM tree. I think it'll have a parent property as well. We'll see if that's there. LMNOP. Lots of information. I hope this isn't too confronting and confusing early on, but it just shows you that one little bit of HTML has all this information associated with it. Here's the parent element. So if you grab an HTML element, you can even access the parent from that element through JavaScript code because it is associated. And that's what the DOM is. It's like the interrelational kind of code properties and data that you can access with JavaScript, okay? But in simple terms, guys, because I know that's a lot, console log you can use to log something out to the console. You can log a message, or it'll just give you the nice simple, hey, here's the div. But if you use console.dir, it's a much better and much more detailed inspection of the little chunk of HTML you're inspecting. In this case, we're inspecting this, because we've made a variable, get cost, and we've grabbed it with this bit of code here, okay? Now, that's the difference between those two things, and as the course goes on, meaning foundation coding, you'll definitely have to use this, because you'll have to drill down into little bits of HTML and update them and recode them and things like that. And what I'll do is I'll use console.dir repeatedly. And I just wanted to show it to you today because we did console log yesterday. But just remember this one, this console.dir, it'll take you further into the code. It'll help you kind of see more details, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're just going to write a basic little program to do with the HTML. And we're going to do some basic calculations with it. It's very simple. And then I'll just assign a few activities after the fact. And a few extra tasks for you guys to go mess around with for today. Okay. First up, I'll just get rid of the console log and console dir because we don't actually need it at the moment. I might bring it back though. I'm going to create 3 variables. Okay. The first variable I'm going to create is price. And the next variable I'm going to create is quantity. And feel free to follow along on this one because this will be the code snippet for the day. And the next one I'm going to create is total. Okay. Now you can see there's a difference between the 3 variables above when compared to the variable on line 38, right? What's different about them? Meaning these 3 compared to the one below. What can you say?
Those are blank variables. So like placeholder ready to be filled with information.
Yeah, that's right. So you're allowed to make these things called variables where you give them a name and then you assign them. What are we doing to the variable with that bit of code? What are we saying for the get cost? What's that? Sorry, Jason?
Giving it a value?
Yeah, we're giving it a value, right? So that's the basic idea of a variable. The 101 basic variable is you name it, make it, and then you give it a value, right? But you can also just make variables, but you leave them empty. You don't actually give them a value. Okay, you're allowed to do that. It's known as a normal coding pattern. And you're just kind of setting things up that may kind of happen later on. So what you can do is you can name your variables above and then you can come below the code and then just assign a value, right? And then the next one would be and you can see in my editor, and you've probably got the same editor, when I start typing things, it gives you shortcuts. I hit tab and it finishes it off. You can hit enter as well on some editors and it'll finish off the code for you. So what we've done now is we've made a price variable, which equals 1, and a quantity variable, which equals 14, okay? And then after that, I'm gonna say, cool. And I'll just wait there for the moment. Okay. So can anybody tell me what they think is going on line 39?
It's making the total equal what the price is times the quantity.
Yeah, that's right. So the star in JavaScript code is the same as the X in our daily math life, right? Where it's multiplying, okay? So it's saying total equals price times quantity. Now, if we wanted to see what total is, what's an easy way for us to view total if we wanted to check this code?
Console or log?
Yeah, we can just go console log. And we just go total. Okay. So this is a very simple little script at the moment. This line is pretty much dead. I'll just comment that out and we'll just save, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump across to the browser and I'm just gonna reload, okay? Now at the moment, it's just saying 14. It's a little bit boring, but if I change that number maybe to 5 and save that, and then jumped across and reloaded, now it's doing the multiplication for us. Cool. So what we can do with JavaScript code really easily is we can use these operators. I think one is star. We could also do plus, which would be addition. So it would be 5 plus 14 going to, I think, 19, is it? So we'll give it a reload. There we go. So we can do multiplication, addition. We can do subtraction, which will take us to -9. And then we can also do this one. No, I thought we could. Does anyone know how to do division? Maybe I've forgotten.
That is great, isn't it? Or
I think it's supposed to be red, eh? I don't think it's going to be happy with that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but you can see what happened there. We're saying 5 divided by 14 there, right? So I'll just change the numbers for a sec. I'll go 20 divided by 2. Yeah, let's see what it does. We'll see if that gives us something. Yeah, cool. That works. I haven't done that in a while using division, but you can do basic arithmetic. Now, for anyone who's not that into math, and for me, I was okay at math, but I certainly wasn't great at math. Don't worry, because coding is not about being great at math. If you're good at math, it helps. Yeah, sure. But you can actually find algorithms online, and you can find code snippets that do the math for you. To become a good coder, you just need to know how code works in general, and you can do anything you want. So if you're not feeling too confident about math, no big deal at all. Definitely not. Okay, so that's just some basic arithmetic. I'm going to Control Z, go all the way back in time to there. Okay, cool. So what we're doing at the moment is we're saying the price is $1 and the quantity is 14. I'm going to change that to 15 just because I want to. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to change the HTML to $1 per apple. Okay. And I'm going to create another little bit of code underneath here. I'm just going to do a paragraph. I'm going to give it an ID. And I'm just going to say total. Okay. Now, in that, for the moment, I'll write total. And I'll just check. I'm going to save now. If you're following along, it's just a paragraph with an ID of total. And I've put some text in there that says total. And I'm just going to save that. And I'm going to jump across and reload. And you can see now that I have total appearing on the screen. Okay, no big deal. We just changed the HTML. Cool. But you'll notice as well that there was something I did there which is really important, and it's worth me pointing out. I made a paragraph which some people may think is really easy and no big deal. But before I went and wrote more code, I made sure that this thing was actually appearing in the browser. And you've got to get used to that when you're writing these programs, because by the time you're doing your summative, you may have 300 to 1,000 lines of JavaScript code, and you got to be confident that your HTML is actually there. Meaning, let's say maybe I broke this. I don't know if that's going to work. Yeah, it was something like that. And if I went and started coding down here and I was having issues and I think it's my JavaScript code for ages, it's actually because my HTML has something wrong with it or the wrong ID name. So you got to be careful and go really slow as you're building up your programs, because you're now working in 3 languages, right? You're going to be working in CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So just make sure that you do things incrementally, okay? So total is now on the screen and everything's all good. Cool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this little chunk of code, which says price times quantity, and we're going to update the total. Okay. So in order to do that, what do you think the next step is for us? Like, how could we update the total with total equals price times quantity? Any guesses how we could update the HTML? What would our next step be? I'll just go down maybe here. So just to confirm, I just want to put the total, which is currently, guys, I'll just have a quick check. It's 15. I want 15 to appear here instead of the word total. How could we do that with the JavaScript alone?
Would we have to first specify the node within that ID that we want to change?
Yeah, so what Jason just said, guys, is this word node. And when he talks about node, he's more or less just saying a little chunk of HTML. Okay, so he's saying we need to get our hands on a piece of HTML. So for Solomon, Zoe, or Ben, which part of the HTML do we need to get our hands on?
The contents inside.
The content, yep. Yep, Solomon said the ID. Any guesses, Zoe?
No.
Okay, Zoe, as a heads up, we're wanting to do the total. So what part of that HTML do you think we want to get our hands on?
Would it be the total ID or the paragraph?
Yeah. So we make things big and simple with naming conventions. That's another thing you'll have to learn. Don't write lots of different crazy names all over the place. Like, okay, I'm making a total variable, which is the total of the price and the quantity of the apples. Therefore, the HTML, I'm going to call the ID total because it relates to the code. So make things as easy as you can. Yeah, make your names nice and simple. Simple code is the best code. Like if other people can come along and look at your code and understand it, like basically what it's doing, it means you're doing a really good job with your code. So let's get our hands on the total. What we're going to do is we'll create another variable and we'll just say get total HTML. How's that? Nice and simple in camel case, right? So you can see that I've got small g, capital T, capital H, and then it's going to be document dot get element by ID. Okay. And I'm going to go, and what do you think I'm going to type in there? Any guesses?
Total.
Total.
Yeah, because we're after the ID total, which you guys can see is here. Okay. Now it's different, guys, and this is worth mentioning. You'll remember this world, right? If I was going to get something, I'll just put a colon there. In jQuery, we actually put the hash to let jQuery know we're after the ID. But in vanilla JavaScript, it's not like that. Okay, so you're going to have to pay close attention to when you need to put a hash for an ID. I'll move that cursor, or a dot for a class. Because when we're in the world of vanilla JavaScript, normal JavaScript, you just write this clean code and it has, sometimes it needs the hash, sometimes it doesn't. You just have to learn which way it is and which way it isn't by checking a book or checking online, okay? Now this part here, and I won't go into this too much, this is actually a method, okay? And you can tell it's a method because it's followed by parentheses. You can see a parenthesis here and a parenthesis here. And you're going to use a lot of these methods through the course, okay? Some are methods that are available to you straight away because a method is like a function. We'll talk about that a bit more in week 2. But that's what get element ID is, okay? So var get total HTML. How can we check if it's working? Like, how can we check if this variable actually, you know, works? Like we've actually got the HTML. What can we do?
Display
Console log,
console
get
log.
total HTML.
Yeah, you got it, right? So we'll go, okay, did I get that, right? So I'm going to go get total HTML, okay? And I'm just going to delete this one to declutter the console. I'll save that. So I'm console logging get total HTML. Okay. Let's have a look what happens. We got it. Okay. Cool. Now, what we can do is we can use a thing called text content on that variable. I'll show you what I mean. So I'll put a comment in here. I'll put a little hash there. Oh. Okay, that's what I'm going to do now, right? So what I'm going to do is say get total HTML, okay? And then we're going to update this now, right? So we're going to say equals, oh, sorry, dot, and I'll talk about this, equals, cool. Right, there we go. Now I'm just going to save this. I'll comment out this console log. So we're just trying to do the code here where we've grabbed the total HTML and we're going to say get total HTML dot text content equals total. Okay, so I'm going to save. I'm going to reload. We'll see what happens. Woohoo! It worked, kind of. Okay, you can see we got this 15 here. So if your code worked, what we've just managed to do, and we'll go over this in a sec, is we've grabbed the paragraph with JavaScript code and then we've updated the value of that paragraph with JavaScript code, okay? So here we grab the paragraph with JavaScript code because it's this total ID, which you can see here. That's us grabbing it, right? And then we said, right, this variable, get total HTML dot text content equals total. Okay? So that's a really simple way to grab something from HTML and then to update it. And you can even run some basic arithmetic calculations before you do the update. Okay, there's actually quite a lot in this small amount of code. I think it's about 12 lines of code. We've got shorthand variables, okay, which is what you can see there. So this is making variables with shorthand, okay? And then we're actually, what are we doing to the variables here? Can anybody tell me, just so we can put a comment in for the next
populating them?
Yeah, populating them, or maybe, what did you say before? I think it was you, Jason. Starts with a V. We're giving
them values.
Okay, so we're making the variables, then we're giving the variables values, and then down here, we're actually doing something pretty intense. And it's kind of the nuts and bolts of front-end web development. What are we doing on line 46 and 47? Any takers? Like, what is that? How could you describe what we're doing on those 2 lines of code?
Grabbing
the element or content.
Sorry, we can you take it as Ben?
Jason, you can go if you want.
We're picking out something from the DOM. Not very technical.
Yeah, we're picking items from HTML, or I'll put DOM, so I'll use them interchangeable, right? And we're basically, here we're picking items from the DOM, and I say getting control or getting our hands on them so we can actually do stuff with those things now, meaning cost being this div, total being this paragraph. And then over here, Solomon or Zoe, what are we doing here?
Isn't it pretty much just what you've commented above?
Yeah.
That you update the paragraph of the total amount?
Yeah. How are we updating it though, Solomon?
With you've got the dot text content and it's
Yes.
equal to the total, whatever's in total.
Yep, well done. So what is text content, Solomon? Any idea of what that might be?
Oh, is that because it's a paragraph?
It is a paragraph, yeah.
Because the ID's within a P tag, so you might use, yeah, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Like in a couple of weeks, you guys will definitely know exactly what text content is, meaning like you'll have a word for it and you'll know what it is in the code world. And it's really not complicated once you understand the type of code text content is. Does anyone know the name of what text content is if we were going to call it a name in code?
Is it a node?
Kind of. There's another name for it. That's okay. Hey, Zoe, can you tell me about this line at all? What do you think's happening on that line?
You've made another variable to target the HTML total, that you're wanting to get the ID from the total within the HTML page.
Yeah. Awesome, well done. So we're making a variable called get total HTML, and we're saying document get this element by ID total, and that is going to be this variable. So we're assigning it to this little piece of memory in the computer. Okay, cool, perfect, fantastic. Now, here's the interesting part. At the moment, right, and this is what I'll finish on, and this is kind of taking us back to the start, which is kind of cool. At the moment, it's updating the DOM. You can see it here with 15. Now it's doing that by this thing called text content, okay? Now, if I was to go underneath and go console.dir, And I'm going to put inside of that, get total HTML. Again, I think we did that before, but we're just going to have a look, okay? Now I'm just going to load up the browser again, and all of a sudden, it's going to give us the paragraph with the arrow. That's what console dir gives us. Now this is for you, Solomon. When I open this here, and anyone else who's curious, if I scroll down this massive list, and I look for T, I think it is, right? Is it T? I think it was T. There you go. See that? See that right there? So all we're doing is we're accessing the text content property. It's called a property in JavaScript code, and we're updating it with JavaScript code. And believe it or not, you can change almost every single one of these properties. Jason, what do you think this one is? See this part?
The styling of that individual p tag.
Yeah, so you can go into here and you can change any CSS you want with JavaScript immediately or programmatically, okay? And that's why, guys, and we'll come back to this. I know it's a bit much if you haven't done a lot of JavaScript code or vanilla JavaScript code. This console dir is very useful because you can inspect elements and just change whatever you want. Whatever you find in there, you can change and update, okay? So you can change colors, you can change CSS, of course, you can change values, and you can basically, we call it manipulate the DOM or change the HTML. And that's exactly, guys, what we did here. We said, okay, paragraph, your text content property is now going to be total, which equals 15, okay? And if I change the price to $3 and jump back, all of a sudden, it's going to be 45, which you can see there. Is that cool? You guys see that? Cool. Now that's going to be us for the day. There's a lot of fundamentals in there, and there's a lot of different things you can do, particularly with console dir and getting elements with the get element by ID. I'm going to set a few basic tasks on the Google Doc for you to go and work away on. If you have any issues with it, I'll stay online till about 1:30 on Slack and Microsoft Teams, so feel free to message me. And if you want to go over anything from the readings or from the small amount of code, also let me know, okay? What else did I just quickly want to mention? I think that's pretty good. Oh yeah, the task, as you can see, is going to head towards having a button click which does a calculation, okay? So instead of the page just loading, we'll make it so you click the button and then it updates the DOM or the HTML after the button click. And everybody here knows how to do a button click, because you're allowed to use this stuff. But it might not work if I use it straight away. Any guesses as to why jQuery might not work?
Need the CDN.
CDN, yeah.
Yeah, it's not plugged in. So Zoe and Ben, you probably remember we have a CDN from the other demo files. You'll need to plug jQuery in if you want to say go, I think the button has a class of BTN primary, right? So I would do something like this without going too much into it, but we'll say BTN hyphen primary. And then you would do this kind of thing, okay? But it's not going to work at the moment because jQuery isn't plugged in. So you'll need to go and do that yourself. If you want to do the click event with JavaScript when I set the task, meaning vanilla JavaScript, that's fine. But you can use jQuery as well if that makes you feel more comfortable. Okay, I'm going to set a couple of tasks. Don't be afraid to reach out if they're a little bit challenging. Just go have a play with the stuff that's in front of you. See if you can do some other arithmetic, maybe add something else to the HTML, or try console dir. That's a very good one to look at closely because that'll make you a much better programmer when you're doing the summative as well, if you understand console dir to a further degree. Okay. Cool. I'm happy to hang back if anybody wants to stick around, but that's us for the live demo today. Keep an eye on the Google Doc as mentioned, and I'll see you guys probably tomorrow, yeah? And I'll edit this video and put it online for the other guys as well.
All right, sweet. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you.
Hey, Jared.
Yeah, mate.
I had one question.
Yeah.
It's just about my summative, real quick.
Yes. Yeah.
Um.
Actually, just let me stop recording.
Yeah.
Sol, I think I can do that. I'm going to stop share. I haven't used the. Oh, yeah.